Tilt is a weird thing. After all, it's just a game. Why do you have to be mad? But sometimes it feels like everyone is mad all the time. Almost every client out of the hundreds I've worked with have struggled with tilt in their games, and it has stopped them improving as fast as they should be. So today I'm going to be breaking down why people tilt, how to start improving regardless of what game you play or your goals. And if you stick around to the end, I'll share with you my own specific routine that I use to stay locked in and focused when I grind. We're going to keep this a little more conversational today, lecture style-ish. So let's talk about tilt. Before we get started, we kind of have to talk about what causes tilt. Because if we don't understand our enemy, how are we going to defeat it? So I like to start by thinking of what causes tilt in two different ways. Way number one is when our actual level of understanding doesn't line up to where it needs to be. So when we learn a topic or we hear about a topic, like let's say you've been on YouTube or Twitter before, unfortunately, and you've heard about like freezing waves, or you've heard about rotating, you've heard about, stutter stepping or shoulder peeking in Valorant, something like that. You might have heard these words or these terms hundreds or thousands of times, but what level of understanding are you really at here? Are you obviously remembering what the words are and maybe even understanding what they are, but can you reliably apply these in your games? Can you analyze each part of this concept so you can improve at it? And can you evaluate, was this even a good idea to do in the first place? Or are you just blanketly applying it to every situation and maybe getting middling results? This is a big problem I've seen now that the player base and information regarding improvement has become so readily available. Every bronze player I know has heard about slow pushing a wave or freezing, where maybe 10 years ago when I started playing the game, no one knew what the heck they were doing. So in my opinion, this is one of the things that causes tilt is mismatched levels of understanding. A lot of people are actually at these first two, maybe three levels of understanding. Like they know it, they understand it, they can apply it sometimes, but they mistakenly think they're somewhere up here at the evaluation or even creating level. Another part of this is something some of you might have heard before called the Dunning-Kruger effect. This happens where you learn a new concept, or maybe you play something and you see an initial peak of success. This is like, okay, I know how to freeze a lane, and maybe you'll play a couple games of solo queue, you'll freeze a lane, and you'll get some really good immediate results. And these results may or may not be correct, but maybe these results have other factors. Like you could have just gotten lucky. These are games or scenarios where freezing was the best option, but because you're lacking those levels of understanding and evaluating, you apply this to a wider sample of games and you realize, oh wait, there's so much more that I know or that I need to know before I really am actually good at this. And the problem is a lot of people get to here, they're like, oh, I fully mastered this concept. I know everything about freezing. I know everything about slow pushing. I know everything about trading, everything about laning, everything about jungling. And then they realize, or they should realize that, oh, hey, even the best players in the world are somewhere in here where, okay, they've acknowledged that they have some level of understanding of the game, but their confidence is always like, hey, I have something more to learn here. And I'm sure you'll see this on Reddit if you've ever been on here. Apparently everyone on Reddit is Challenger, and everyone on Reddit is better than even the world's finalists every single year without fail. It's kind of crazy, but the confidence gap. So these are two backgrounds or backbones of tilt, or the mechanisms behind why tilt happens. Now let's talk about what that looks like in your games. These are screenshots, unfortunately, I know, avert your eyes, from two different real people's op.gg's. I did the math. This is around 1,700 wins and 1,700 losses. So this person played 3,000 plus solo queue games with barely over a 50% win rate. The amount of time it would take to do that is just staggering. And because of this, they are not climbing in ELO 2 seasons, thousands of games. It's borderline on wasted time. You can play hundreds or thousands of games per season and not see any meaningful improvement due to tilt or those mismanaged expectations or the mismatched understanding. And it's not because players like this are playing to lose or to waste their time. I think a lot of people are just stuck in a cycle, and it's hard to get out of that cycle without some outward influence. And I do want to say, I have this note here, but if your goal is to just play the game in your spare time and have fun, maybe you casually play a couple ranked games a week, or maybe you're an ARAM only or a norm only or a quick play only player. That's totally fine. This video is maybe actually for you, but not in the sense that it's going to help you climb, but it's going to help you have a more enjoyable experience with the game because, like I said at the beginning, it's a game. You're supposed to have fun. And even if you're losing or winning or playing to be LCS or LTA champions now, it's all about having fun. That was a little bit long for an intro, but I want everyone here to be able to understand the importance of mindset and the methodology behind improvement, help you develop some confidence and be less anxious in your gameplay, and then minimize tilt to help you avoid loss streaks and find more efficient improvement, because we don't all have a lot of time in our days. So about me, just real quick. Who am I? I'm Bach. I'm 30 years old. I'm 8,000 years old. I am an anthropologist. I was previously with Cloud9, where I helped run their Training Grounds program. I was a League of Legends coach there as well. I coached for Flame Hard, a team in EU, where I won an ERL and then promoted them to the next division up. And recently with Supernova, where that was a North American team that I helped develop some talent who hopefully is going to go on to big and better things someday. But I also have experience with many games, as you can see. Well, Valorant, Top 100 PUBG, you know, all these fun little things that I do. Coached worldwide, traveled worldwide. I love helping people from around the world. You know, part of my background of anthropology. Just a little bit about me and my perspective to maybe set the stage a little bit. So why should you care? Or why you should care, honestly? And this is kind of why I care. Because I'm 30, I'm ancient now. Maybe I'm having my quarter life or third of life crisis here. And I'm thinking, man, this graph on the right is how many weeks you have to live. Each dot is a week. And here I am, 30, almost 30 and a half years old. And that chart's looking a little too full for my liking. I don't know how many seasons of League of Legends I have to play 3,400 games left in me, you know? That's a lot of dots filled up. I want to make the most of my time. And whether you're, you know, 15, 20, or 25 or older than me, I think it's valuable to get the most out of your time or at least enjoy doing it. So that's why I care, and I think that's why you should care as well. Enough preaching, let's go on. Let's talk a little bit more about it. Section 1, mentality and goals. Maybe you've heard this before, but there's like a dichotomy that you have to worry about here. One is the growth mindset, the other is the fixed mindset. And if we talk about what that might be, maybe you've heard these words before, but let's break them down a little bit. So growth mindset is the idea that abilities and skills can be developed through dedication, effort, and learning. And a fixed mindset is just the belief that abilities are fixed traits that can't be improved. And you might be saying, Leo Bach, like, obviously, I have a growth mindset. I know, like, I've gotten better, I've climbed, but sometimes I feel like people get lost in the plot of what that actually means. Like, it's so obvious that if we can get to the point where we're like little fetus babies crawling around on the ground, unable to speak, to these fully functioning adults, we've had to learn all of these things: conversational skills, handwriting, you know, math. That's it. Actually, that's all we learn. How to breathe, you know, or how to run, how to work out, how to live our lives. If we can learn all these super complicated and intricate tasks, of course we can get better at a video game, especially with all these resources that are out there, all these free, cool resources. But sometimes people fall into this fixed mindset where they feel like, man, I've been silver for a couple of years now and I'm just not getting better. Maybe I'm only meant to be silver. Step 1, the first step you have to understand is growth mindset is going to be your key. It's not going to solve all your problems, but it needs to be step 1 where it unlocks the idea in your mind that you can improve. Because it's so easy to throw yourself a pity party and whine and cry on Twitter and Reddit and all these websites like, wow, I'm stuck, my teammates suck. Yeah, if you want to be a professional victim, then great. If you need people to validate that, yes, people in your elo suck, that's fine, but don't let it come in the way of you and your improvement. So I always do this exercise with new students or new teams when we talk about improvement, because improvement, this all ties into tilt and expectations. So just bear with me, but I'll sit down with the player and I'll ask them, draw me something. And that's all I'll tell them. And when I tell them, draw me something, sometimes they'll draw me a little smiley face in the air if we're in person. Sometimes they'll draw me like a stick figure. Sometimes they'll not even know what to do. And I think that's the point I'm trying to illustrate here. When we start with an idea in our mind that is so vague and so nebulous that it has no direction, this is the same thing as saying, I want to get better at League of Legends. You have no direction. It's like a feeling. There's no substance to it. So how do we do this? How do we make it better? What if I told you, draw me something in Microsoft Paint? We've added a medium to it. Okay, so at least maybe everyone will give me something in MS Paint now. If I say, draw me a flower, okay, that's even more specific. Maybe we get some different types of flowers. Maybe I say, draw me a red rose, or a red rose with a green stem in MS Paint. Now, all of a sudden, if I ask 100 people to do this, sure, there's going to be a little bit of variation, but comparing the results of 100 people from this level to even this level, or even this level, you're going to see so much less variation. And this is also where that tilt in managing expectations comes from. So keep this in your mind as we go into the next section. The important thing when we're looking at improvement is be as specific as possible. This is a concept called managing expectations. If we look back at this last example I told you, hold in your mind, you didn't have to hold it in your mind for very long, did you? But if I ask a newbie, someone who's never drawn before, maybe they don't have a tablet, maybe they've never even touched a pen or don't even know what Microsoft Paint is, to draw a flower, I highly doubt they're going to be able to replicate like something on the right here their first try. Very, 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 very high chance that is not the case. It would be something like this. But maybe you've watched a video on YouTube and you said, wow, the guy on YouTube, Coach Rogue, Coach Curtis, Coach Cupcake, Coach B, or whatever, these thousands of other good coaches out here have made this concept seem incredibly easy. And then now I try and play it in my game for the first time ever, and I'm expecting it to turn out like this. But it looks kind of like this. And now I'm angry. Now I'm frustrated. Well, why? Why would you expect someone with the skill of the artist in the first picture to immediately be capable of producing art in the second picture? Well, that's because we need to manage our expectations. So it is good that we're getting specific, and it is good that we've set like clear goals or we know what we're practicing. But with all things, there's time, there's repetition. You got to get the reps in. And there's also maybe underlying things that are kind of clogging up the way that we're going to talk about more here too. Another experiment I like to do. Imagine you're at like a hot date. It's like a black tie event. There's a $200 entry fee. This is going to be really good food. Maybe not world star hip hop, but like world-class Michelin star food here. You show up at this restaurant, you're looking snazzy, you're ready to eat some amazing, God, like, damn, this is good food. And they come out and they bring you McDonald's. Are you really going to be upset though? Like, McDonald's is pretty good, right? McDonald's is great. But wait, hold up. Both things can be true. If you come in to an event expecting one thing and they serve you another thing, even if that thing is good, you're still going to be upset because your expectations are not matching reality. This can be the same thing. You go into solo queue and you think, wow, I'm going to have the best teammates in the world. This session's going to be great because I'm going to win all my games. I'm going to get so much better. I'm going to find so much value here. And then you get a couple games where you get fed, which is still good, but then some people on your team are inting. Is your whole night ruined? Or do you need to adjust your expectations and say, hey, I'm here not for the black tie event. I'm not here for the hot date. I'm here to eat some food. And as long as that food is good, that's all that I care, because that's the only thing that I came here for. I'm not letting my expectations get in the way of me enjoying my evening or my experience with the game. Once we do that, now going from step 1 to 3, or step from this first image to the final product, looks a lot more manageable. We can break up our improvement into chunks here and say, okay, maybe step 1 to 3 is not realistic, but step 1 to step 2, this is looking much more manageable. Or maybe you break it down even more. There's something in between 1 and 2 in this instance. And then looking at number 2, okay, man, it's still a ways to go to number 3, but it's looking a lot more manageable now. And we're not thinking that we can immediately replicate things that we've seen online or concepts that we kind of understand one-to-one with professional players immediately. So how do we not do this? How do we like avoid like scenarios where this happens? Or for anybody who's watched some of my other videos, you might have heard me talk about goal setting, so we're gonna get into that. But how do we not do this? So step 1, and I think this is the most common way, is by setting a SMART goal. And a SMART goal here is something that is specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. If you need a second to read these like little bullet points here, please pause and take your time to do so. I don't want to go through it because it's a PowerPoint and you can just pause the video, true. But specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So how do we set a goal? Oh, that T's out of the box. Let's pretend that isn't like that, okay? That'll be our little secret. Like Bob Ross putting little happy trees everywhere, right? So if I were to set a goal, a SMART goal in relating to League of Legends, the specificity here would be to achieve Emerald 4 before the end of the rank split. That's very specific, right? Emerald 4, that's a rank in the game. I'm not just saying getting better. It's measurable. It's quantitative because I can measure the increase in LP day to day or week to week. And it's achievable. I think Plat to Emerald, pretty chill, not super unreasonable. It's an achievable goal. Relevant. The player enjoys playing League of Legends and already plays several ranked games per week and has few other commitments. So it's not like they're going to school full time for their master's program and they're working through a messy divorce or something. They have time to play League of Legends and there's no other things that are in their life that are demanding attention. And lastly, it's time bound. So we talked about before the end of the rank split, that's one aspect of being time bound, but every week the player will assess their gains or losses to track their progress. And that hard cutoff means that, hey, if the end of the season happens, I think it's not November this year because they made it the 3 splits again. I forgot. I need to adjust that. Pretend that says December. Well, that's like once that happens, you either did it or you don't, right? So what's the problem with this? What could be improved on? For anybody who said ranked base goals are not optimal for growth, why? I think almost everybody I've talked to or coached has always said, man, I really want to get to this rank. Why is that maybe not optimal for growth? Well, it's because your rank is not really something you have direct control over. Obviously, there's a correlation between skill and rank, but the rank is not the cause of your skill, it is the effect. So in my opinion, as a coach, your goals should then be directly related to things you do control. So examples of good goals might be a number of games played per day or per week or per month on a certain champion or role that you're trying to improve on, or reps spent in practice tool for 1v1s to refine matchups, practicing CSing for certain minutes in practice tool, crashing certain set plays, like crashing at wave 3 or 4 and resetting for a cheater every game, regardless if it's good or not. You're refining that specific skill. placing X amount of wards per game. Obviously, this one's a little bit more contentious here, but if your goal is to work on improving your vision, then actively focusing on placing more vision is going to help a little bit. And this one's probably like the most contentious, but I think it can help depending on what your goal is, right? Or like what you struggle with. If you're a player who always coin flips your early lane, intentionally playing to not die in lane might mean that you're playing a little bit too passively, but that might be exactly what you need as a specific player to find improvement in your games. All of these are things directly within your control. Like if the jungler tower dives you with the mid laner and the top laner at 7 minutes, well, it's not really your fault. So you're not really, or it's not really like as much of your fault here, right? And crashing and practicing CS or taking 1v1s with your friends or rep spent in practice tool or playing a certain number of games per day or per week or per month. All of these things are things that you can directly control. And the best part is when you do practice on a certain task, what happens is all these like little tasks all come together to reflect your actual skill at the game. And okay, if you get a little bit better at CSing, you're not instantly going to go from bronze to diamond. But if you get a little bit better CSing and you stop dying so much and your warding gets a little bit better, and now you understand your matchups because you're practicing certain matchups in, customs with your friends. Well, now all of a sudden you are going to get better. And when you get better, you are naturally going to win more games over a larger sample size. But because we're not focusing on winning or losing the game, we're not getting discouraged. A loss in the game doesn't mean that we failed in any of these goals. It's just the outcome, and we don't care about the outcome as much because we're focusing on our own goals that we have control over. If I were to ask you that same question to draw me a red rose in MS Paint, what it would look like broken down is, okay, well, you would draw like the stem, and then look, what are the aspects of drawing a stem? You have things like line thickness. Okay, now the petals, and you have to work on like a skill like color blending and the leaves. Maybe you have to work at like the angle of lighting and shading. And this would compare to League of Legends where, all right, I want to reach Emerald in League of Legends. That can be like the ideal that you're working towards, but there's different aspects of the game. I mentioned, okay, well, I want to improve on my early game. Okay, I want to work on CSing in lane or trading or, making sure I'm taking the right runes or masteries. All right, cool. I've kind of felt like I've gotten a little bit better on that. Let's tidy up my mid game through these very specific things. Fighting when I have a power spike. Okay, I'm Ezreal. I have my Triforce. I'm now looking to take active fights where before maybe I wasn't as much. CSing, still, like it's a big part of the entire game. But broken up into different chunks, just getting better at one or two of them per stage of the game is going to like return massive dividends in your overall skill and show in your rank climb, reducing your tilt. That's the key here, is these are all ways or aspects of your mental or how you approach improvement that are going to reduce your tilt. So how do we avoid it? Like, what are some more ways to avoid tilt? I think it's helpful to kind of think of what type of player you are. And obviously these are 3 very broad buckets. I'm not going to sit here and say like, oh, you are definitely 100% this one player and you are definitely 150% this one player. Everybody has a mix of all 3 in my opinion, but which one do you most identify with? And if you'll allow me to be vulnerable for a second, I very much identify with somebody who has ranked anxiety. I'm a very anxious person. My girlfriend likes to refer to me as the most extroverted introvert she's ever met. And I struggle a lot with stress. So it's really hard for me sometimes to hit the play button. And when I am stressed, sometimes I feel like I'm not able to perform at my best. But for every downside, there is an upside. I also tend to just really hyper analyze all my own mistakes. And I go back over my footage and I'm like, okay, I need to play that better. I need to do this better. Because I'm so hypercritical, I'm able to get a lot more value out of the games I do play. But maybe you're somebody who's tilted. You get frustrated at the first mistake, rage quit, FF votes, but I mean, you have passion for the game. You obviously, maybe if you say on Twitter or you complain to your friends, League of Legends is a shit game, I hate this game, but you keep coming back, maybe, just maybe, you are a whiny little baby who really does love the game, and that's okay. Because the game does suck sometimes. I love this game, I do it for a living, but some patches or some matchups or some champions or some players are just, man, they tilt the shit out of me. So I understand, but at the core, you got that love in there. So don't run from the love. One love. Or maybe you're a spammer, somebody who doesn't really tilt or doesn't really have anxiety, but who just mindlessly spams the game. Maybe you're that 1,700 wins, 1,699 losses, top lane player from the beginning of the lecture here, where you play 30 plus ranked games. I would change this to a day, and you have a high variance in performance. Some games you're 0-10, some games you're 10-0. But because you're spamming the game so much, you're probably able to pick up champions and concepts more fluidly. because, you spend 100 games playing a champion, you will inevitably pick up skill at that champion. So there's a downside and an upside to either one. So understand what makes you up, what makes you up as a person, and make peace with that and say, hey, these are the cons and these are the pros, and what can I do with that? And from there, we got to take control. This is something that I think a lot of people know in their heart of hearts, but maybe just don't do. But you're a person and you have needs too. When I'm like, what's that Snickers commercial? It's like, is it Snickers? Man, where they're like, are you hungry? Because you haven't had a Snickers or something. And they feed them a Snickers and they go from a monster to like a little cutesy little angel or whatever. That's unironically you when you're playing a competitive or stressful thing and you are not taking good care of your body. I can tell you for a fact that if I haven't eaten or if I'm dehydrated, maybe I'm feeling gross because I haven't showered yet today, I'm too hot or too cold, I can't feel my hands, maybe I'm just super exhausted, or I have, maybe an assignment due at work, or back when I was in school, I had a quiz due by midnight, and here I am queuing up. Well, I'm not really going to be able to play at my best, and that stress, the things completely unrelated to the game are going to make it so I'm not able to perform at like my best level of play in the game. You don't need to be in perfect condition in order to play ranked. You just have to be aware of your current physical and mental status so you can predict how it might affect your performance. Remember that example of the hot date? Well, if I go in there expecting Michelin star food and I get McDonald's, I'm going to be pissed. But if I'm like, okay, I understand I haven't really eaten too much today, or maybe I had a bunch of shit food to eat, and I'm a little tired, and I've got homework to do as soon as I get done playing, so I only have time for 2 games. I go in with McDonald's, and I end up with, Burger King. Hey, that's an upgrade. So I'm actually happy, even though this is like, we can objectively say that Burger King is worse than a Michelin star food, but because I'm being realistic about my expectations, I'm not disappointed in the slightest. So as promised, here's my own pre-ranked ritual. And I'm not a superstitious person at all, but I do believe in the power of habits. Habits are great because what you really want to do for any sort of improvement or social experiment, or even like, here, I'll relate it to school because everyone loves school. Whenever you do a project in science, you don't just, all right, here's our hypothesis. Let's just do random bullshit and see what happens. You have a controlled experiment. You have, here's a hypothesis. All right, let's rigorously test it using these like strict guidelines, and let's evaluate, and then let's even retest it, right? So what a ritual does, or a pre-ranked ritual here does, is if I'm really going to try and improve or play at my top quality performance as often as possible, I'm going to recreate the circumstances or scenarios as closely as possible every single day. This is the same as if you play competitive as well. If you practice in scrims, well, you want that practice in scrims to closely mirror your stage matches, right? This means like your equipment, your mindset, how seriously you guys are putting intensity into it. All of this wants to mirror practice and the actual officials as much as possible to make it more worth your time. So what I do for mine is I get a little light exercise in the morning. This wakes me up. This gets my blood flowing. I don't have a super fancy gym membership. I go to Planet Fitness, and I'm lucky enough that it's a couple minutes drive away. But when it's not, I don't feel like doing that, I'll literally just go walk around my apartment complex. So 3 to 5 minute walk, so chill. And then when I get back from that, I'll write a notepad of tasks I need to do for the day. And I write everything down, even non-work, school, or game-related stuff, like make my bed, or shower, or vacuum, or eat lunch, or, take the trash out. Super easy things, so I can just start checking things off the list immediately and then feel good about making progress that puts me in a positive and productive mindset for the day. Then I'll obviously shower, I'll clean up, and grab a bottle of water. That's a water for my EU blokes. I had to throw that one in there. I'll eat a light meal, overnight oats or a sandwich usually for my breakfast / lunch. And then I'll determine how many games I'll play and what my goal is for the day. Because my overall ideal is I want to improve, and beneath that, I'll have, okay, I'm going to play X amount of like whatever certain tasks per week. And then how am I going to do that? That's the daily goal. And each day has its own like little mini daily goal that I break it into, so I can every day make a little chip away progress towards my goal. All of this takes maybe an hour tops, and I've now made sure that I've taken care of myself for the whole day. Remember those needs I talked to in the slide previously? Okay, I got a little exercise, so I'm feeling positive mentally and physically. I've taken care of my needs, like water, food, cleanliness, exercise, things that are non-related to the game. So now when I do play, I'm a lot less worried. Even if I do have assignments or work deadlines that I need to get to, I have a structure of, okay, I have so much time, or I have the ability to budget my time so effectively that I'm so much less stressed and I'm allowed to focus more on the game. And that naturally leads me to better results. So I challenge you right now as the viewer to take 2 minutes and come up with your own pre-ranked ritual. It doesn't need to be as strict as mine, but the consistency is what matters, because we want consistency, things that you can repeat, and keep you focused to get your level of gameplay as high as it possibly can reliably. And this is the same thing as setting a New Year's resolution. Sometimes people will say, all right, it's the New Year's. I want to go to the gym every single day for the whole year. And they get 2 weeks in and they realize, wait, this sucks. Why did I do this? Why did I say every day? Why didn't I say 2 days a week or something more manageable? What I highly encourage everyone to do is keep it manageable. It's worthless to have a goal that you give up on after a week or two. So start small. In fact, the first thing you thought of, cut it back by another 20%. So if you said you wanted to play 5 games a week, drop it down to 4 games a week. And then when you stick to that 4 games a week for several weeks and you feel really good and you're making progress and you say, hey, this is really manageable, then up it. But not by a lot, up it by 1 or 2, right? And from there, you can keep building and building and building that habit, and you will see improvement. We need to talk about stress a little bit because stress also leads into goals or into tilt and can affect your improvement. So we get stressed when we're under pressure, obviously, right? So making split-second decisions and multitasking is very difficult for like almost everybody. There's something called mental bandwidth or RAM that you have to think of. And this is usually why higher level players or higher ranked players are better than players that are even slightly lower ranked than them. I use this comparison. A diamond player and an emerald player, on paper, there is a difference. But when you look at their actual in-game skill, you might not see that much of a realistic difference in like very specific scenarios. Maybe you'll see an emerald player has pretty good mechanics compared to a diamond player, decent decision-making, decent CSing, decent champion mastery. But the difference here is the diamond player has more knowledge, more skills, more habits ingrained into their unconscious gameplay than the emerald player does. An emerald player can perform better than a diamond player at sometimes, but over a long period of time, consistently, the diamond player will play better because they are able to use their extra mental bandwidth to focus on other aspects of the game, while the emerald player is using all their mental bandwidth just to keep up with the level of the diamond player. So what I like to do is proactively front load each game so I know what to expect going in and I can minimize the variables that come into play. So I like to run through that pre-ranked checklist or make sure that I did everything I could before I even queue up. So I'm in a healthy mindset. I like to do stuff like assess team comps, like what's my role in the game. I like to predict the pathing or predict the enemy's habits. You can do this in whatever game you want. Like in League of Legends, it's really, if you have an in-depth understanding of the game, you'll be able to understand like jungle pathing at least a little bit. That's more than fine just to even start thinking about it. But in Valorant or CS, you'll know if you're playing Dusty, like, okay, they lost pistol. What are they going to do? They're going to rush B. Deciding your preliminary build path or, like what champions you're going to play, checking potential win conditions and communicating with pings or feeding info to your team, even in like champion select or before the minions have spawned, right? All of these things you can do to set yourself up and take a load off of stress and of your mental bandwidth so you can actively think about things that are going to help you improve or win the game. Do it before the super difficult team fights happening that are requiring all of your resources. Above all else, your rank does not determine your value as a human being. I think in the pursuit of growth, some people forget this. Even myself sometimes, and I get too hard on myself. It is a video game. You're supposed to have fun, even if you're trying to go pro. It's not worth making yourself absolutely miserable. So find a way to have fun with it. Find a way to make peace with it. And I hope you enjoyed this presentation. Like, comment, subscribe. Bye.